We are here at CPAC 2025, and I'm joined by Indiana's Attorney General, Todd Rokita, and Daily Signal contributor, Hans von Spakovsky, and Heritage Foundation legal fellow. It is great to be with you, both of you gentlemen. Mr. Attorney General, so you're here at CPAC. You're going to be talking about public safety, obviously the role that border security plays in keeping your state safe. What's your message to the attendees today?
Well, first of all, even though Indiana's technically, geographically, not a border state, when you don't enforce your border, as we've seen over the last 4 years, every state's a border state. And we have seen the terrible effects in Indiana, whether it's increased fentanyl, increased crime, overcrowded emergency rooms, overcrowded school rooms. And if you put it all in a word, I think the word would be unfair. It's unfair to Hoosiers. It's unfair to Americans who are here already, who came the right way. It's unfair to the Indiana taxpayer when they can't get their own kids educated because the teacher, for example, is translating lesson plans in 10 different languages in a given hour.
And Indiana's problem, of course, geographically is it's next to Illinois, which is one of the worst states in the country in terms of its sanctuary policies. In fact, so bad that, as folks know, Pam Bondi, the new Attorney General, thank goodness, has filed suit against both the state of Illinois, Chicago, and Cook County because of their obstruction of federal immigration enforcement.
Yeah, and thank gosh for Pam, too. And she's been, of course, the former Florida Attorney General. We worked well with her together. It's just so great to have a friend, whether it's Pam, Kristi Noem, Tom Holman, and the president himself. For 4 years, we were ignored. And now we can pick up the phone. And you see Indiana becoming a true partner because and believe it or not, even in Indiana, we have a few recalcitrant sheriffs, a few very liberal mayors who have said that we're told our police force to stand down, all those things. And so, they've gotten a few letters from me, and soon we're going to be in court. Because you have got to at least cooperate with ICE. You have got to at least communicate with ICE. If they'd like for you to hold someone in their jail for a couple days so they can get them, so they can deport them, we should at least do that much.
Right. One point I think people are not realizing in all of this, when you look at the number of criminal, illegal aliens, dangerous aliens, particularly members of gangs that the administration in just the past month has picked up, I mean, we're talking about thousands and thousands of them. Well, people have to realize that in the short amount of time we've had, they would not have been able to investigate and find out where these people were. This means that the Biden administration already knew where they were.
Exactly.
They knew where these dangerous criminals were, and they said, well, we're just going to leave them in all these local communities instead of picking them up.
It's insane. I mean, how more clearly do you have to say America than what these people did over the last 4 years? And there's just no excuse for it.
So talk to me about some of those recalcitrant officials who aren't cooperating. What has been the response from, say, somebody at the federal level like a Tom Homan? And then when you say you're going to take them to court, what does that process actually look like?
Well, we've already sued two county sheriffs because they simply, in their either practices or outright written policies, and in Indiana the sheriffs are elected, so they're responsible for themselves and the voters are responsible for them. But they have said no. And these are by the way some of our two most liberal counties, right? This is St. Joseph County, which houses Notre Dame. It is otherwise a fairly Democratic county that's changing because of some great Republicans up there like Amy Drake and others, but also the People's Republic of Bloomington, which is Monroe County, that sheriff. And that's of course IU. So some of our college areas, have this bad idea that they don't have to cooperate or they shouldn't help at all, or they're not going to, And look, I'm not saying that the local police force has to do the federal police force's job. In fact, there's some constitutional issues with all that we should be very cognizant and careful of. But look, law enforcement and everything else coordinates with each other, helps each other. It should be no different here. And by the way, guys, for those of you at the county local level, think of all the paperwork you're going to save. If you're able to call ICE instead of say there's a traffic accident, say there's some other kind of crime, and you find out you have an illegal alien, let ICE know. They'll take care of the paperwork.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this too is that, as the Attorney General says, yeah, the federal government can't force state and local governments to enforce federal immigration law, but on the other hand, state and local governments can't obstruct and prevent enforcement, and that's the fine dividing line between the two.
Thank you.
By the way,
And
Heritage,
that's what our state law says, by the way,
yeah,
that I enforce.
Heritage is actually about to publish a piece that was prompted by the governor of New Jersey saying that he was sheltering an illegal alien, which of course his spokesman the next day said, oh, no, he's not really doing that. But we're about to publish a paper on the fact that any local sheriffs or others who think they have immunity from criminal prosecution by the feds if they violate federal immigration laws.
Oh, interesting.
There's no such immunity. If they harbor, shelter, transport illegal aliens, that's a violation of federal criminal law, and they can be prosecuted for it. And by the way, that statute has been upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court.
Oh, that's terrific.
Okay.
And see, that brings in Pam Bondi again.
Yeah.
And that's a long way of saying elections have consequences.
Yes.
They sure do. Well, speaking of elections, let's talk about an issue that I know both of you care about, and that is election integrity. Indiana's.
We're not laughing at election integrity. We're laughing at our history, which has been way too long.
The Attorney General is former Secretary of State,
Yeah.
so he really knows elections.
Your state led the way when it came to voter ID, right? Made national headlines as a result of the Supreme Court case. What are some of the steps that you would like to see states, in your experience, enact to make sure that we can secure the elections as much as possible going forward?
Well, and that's how Hans and I met each other originally. I mean, we were fighting that war back in the day. And you're right, Indiana did become the first state to have photo identification at our polling places. And the way
And had record turnout.
Because of it.
After it went into effect in the presidential election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we said, you know what, we people had confidence in it again. They said, look, if we're going to spend an hour of our time, and hopefully it's not more than that, standing in line going to vote, we want it to count. We want it to know it matters. And so it was what we call who's your common sense. Right. And so Han was a great promoter of that. And now, because of the heritage work and others, and I think we're up to 32 states now.
Yeah.
So the issue, to answer your question, has evolved. Now, back then, this was almost 20 years ago, most people voted in person. We can argue about whether that should still be the case or not, or how long polling places should be open. Do we have a voting season or a voting day right now? The fact of the matter is, it's moving to the absentee realm. It's moving to some form of that. And how do you check an ID if it's done by mail? I think for us, that's a lot of where the issues have gone, and we have to protect that vote and that ballot just as much as we protect the in-person ballot integrity.
Yeah, I'll tell you another issue on this that demonstrates the difference between the prior administration and the current administration. As the Attorney General knows, just before the last election, Virginia was one of a number of states that announced that they had checked their DMV list against their statewide voter registration list, and they had found in Virginia over 6,000 aliens who were registered to vote. They removed them, and what happens? The Biden Justice Department sued them, claiming that federal law prevented them from removing these aliens from the rolls. Within the last, which is just crazy, but within the last day or so, the new Justice Department has thrown that case out.
Oh,
that's wonderful.
Excellent.
So the way Indiana plays into that, we have a great Secretary of State, Diego Morales. He's the first Latino Secretary of State that's a Republican, and he's from Indiana. We're very proud of him and his work. We joined forces and asked the Biden administration for a list of those illegal aliens as well that also might have been registered to vote here in the state of Indiana.
Right.
And we're still waiting. But we're hopeful now with the new, we know with the new administration, we're going to get that list. And as soon as I get that list, I'm going to compare it. And so is Diego. Who voted and who's illegal. And stay tuned on that one.
Thank you for your leadership on that. Before you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you, from your previous experience serving in the House as vice chair of the Budget Committee, what you think about the debate that is raging in Washington over Elon Musk and Doge and the spending cuts.
I am so happy this is being done, and I think the approach is right. Coming at it from the outside with someone with the credibility of Elon Musk.
Probably need to, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's been tried, and we've had the wars, and I can give my own list of examples that got voted down from being changed, right? So from the outside is a great approach. In fact, we're doing an Indiana Doge as well. So with Governor Mike Braun, and I found 500. If we could get this law changed, with one little sentence in Indiana law, I could save the taxpayers $500,000 out of my own office. So you look to yourself first, and this was one example of what we found if we can get a little law changed. But having said all that, and Hans will back me up on this hopefully, if you look at our total federal spending pie, only 25% is discretionary.
Right.
Around that. And so Doge is playing in a little sliver of that 25%. If you're going to get to the debt, if you're going to really restructure the size and scope of the spending of federal government, you got to get to what we call as on autopilot. And that's 75% of our spend now. And that's these legislators don't vote on them. These congressmen and women, these senators don't vote on the 75%. It's baked into the underlying law. What law? Our Social Security law, our Medicare law, our other programs. And we're not saying before anyone goes crazy and shows a picture of me throwing someone off a cliff, granny or whatnot.
You remember that?
It's
yes.
not that. If we have the guts to act now, we could tell our kids and our grandkids, hey, you're going to have a new deal. It's going to be a fair deal, and there's going to be a safety net. But since you're going to live to over 100, you shouldn't get Social Security maybe as much at 60.
Right.
There's going to be a new deal, but we can have it so people can plan their whole lives for it and not affect anybody on or near to be on it.
Yeah, people are going to live to over 100, but they're not going to live to 150, which is some of the information that Elon Musk has found in the Social Security Administration record.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right, yeah. No, and as you've talked about, I mean, fortunately, you've even had some judges who have a fairly liberal history backing up Musk and some of the things that he's carried out doing. So,
people should look at why are so many people on the left side political aisle protesting what's going on with Doge and Elon Musk? Why? Because they're bringing transparency. And finally, the American people are finding out how their taxpayer funds are being spent. And that's what's upsetting them.
Yeah, and not corrupt. Why would you get upset?
Exactly right.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry to be blunt about it, but that's it.
Yeah.
Thank you for your leadership in Indiana. It's nice to visit with you today. We'll be closely following the work that you do, and please keep in touch with the Daily Signal.
Yeah, you bet. Great time. Yeah, I love what you guys do. Thank you so much for giving us an alternative to what has been a legacy bad experience for years.
Good way of putting it. We'll be back with more from the Daily Signal.